Hello, my name is Peter Cinnamon, and you're very welcome to a friendly neighbourhood weekly Irish League podcast called Kicking Match. And if you're already feeling like you've been indulging a wee bit too much this silly season, well, you better be ready for some more games, you gluttonous little soul, because they're coming at you faster than a deposit request for that Christmas do you'd said you'd go to. And while Coleraine are keeping it tight at the back, Niamh McDaid is scoring goals like it's going out of fashion. The things that man can do with his feet would amaze you. It's just a shame goal dancing celebrations is just not one of them. Meanwhile, Glens continue to dip. Lauren go to Lurgan and get away with it. And don't adjust your podcast players just yet. Yes, Portadown have finally won a game of football, and we're going to talk about it. It has been one of those weeks. Starts off at a really steady pace, and then all of a sudden you just don't know where to look. Some electrifying results on the pitch, some potentially hair-raising drama behind the scenes, all of that going on as we speed towards probably the most hectic part of the football schedule. So strap in, as we are guaranteed to have plenty more bumps along the way. One man though who is suited, booted, ready to go. One man who, well, this isn't his first rodeo. It's another debutant to the podcast. It is sports journalist and former sports editor of the Ballymena and Antrim Times. It's Stephen Alexander.
Hi Peter, thanks very much for having me.
It is great to have you. I'm glad to have you on, mainly because as I sit and chat to you, I'm filling out a little funding form to the Mid and East Antrim Council, hoping I can get a bit of grant money, share it out amongst the community, get a man from out there. I'm here for all perspectives, all voices, and it's good to have one of your inflection. Stephen, I've felt this bombastic season. It was bubbling away in the background for a few weeks. I could see that little jolt of unpredictability pulse through a few teams. Call it a dollop of overconfidence over here, a splash of team unity over there. Some players finding their feet, others perhaps getting found out. And we're going to tear the first door off this week's selection box of games. And oh look, what is that? A weirdly specific registration drama popping up just after a game is finished. We'll park that for now. As for a 12th of the fan base of this league, there is celebration. It's been months in the waiting. It has finally happened. Portadown have finally got the first win of the Rishi Sunak Premiership. Stephen, some people say this was coming. Others will say even a broken clock is right twice. What a relief if you are a Portadown fan. 3-1 winners they were away to Newry City. That is exactly what Niall Currie has been after.
Very much so, Peter. I mean, it has been an enormously long time in coming. I actually, a couple of weeks ago, I had done a bit of vox pops of interviews for fans for the Irish League show, BBC's Irish League show. And it was the day Carrick were playing Portadown, so I had the dubious pleasure of trying to get some Portadown fans to describe the first half of their season so far. I was a wee bit hesitant about asking them, Peter, to be honest there, because I wasn't sure what sort of words might come back in my direction. But I have to say fair play to them now that even that day at Carrick, they had a tremendous support, and they had a drummer who was just trying his level best to sort of engender some sort of enthusiasm into the team. Even whenever Portadown won a corner that day, there was mass applause and cheering. But on a serious note, I spoke to Niall after the match that day, and obviously, I mean, Niall's a tremendously engaging character, as you know, Peter. I remember saying he has an enormous job in his hands, but look, he was taking it very steadily, and he was saying basically the only short-term target for Portadown was to stay in touch with Dungannon at the foot of the table. I think, Peter, any other season with Portadown's points record at this stage, I think they would be sort of cut adrift already at the bottom, but Dungannon's poor form has given Portadown something just to cling on to there. Again, that was I have to say I wasn't just overly confident that they were going to get that result at Newry on Sunday, but what a tremendous result it was, and what a magnificent goal as well in a moment from Greg Moorhouse.
Absolutely. I tweeted out saying he's probably done it from 35 yards. Strike that from the record. It was probably 40. What a goal it is. So. Ironically, going against Uri City, it was Lockhart-esque if you saw that goal at the start of the season. It popped up
Exactly,
for them.
yes.
He was free of a man. He just had to look up and he thumped it on the volley. It was high. It was over the keeper, but then it just dipped at the right moment. Top corner. The Portadown fans go wild. So does Greg Moorhouse. He did not a by-oar towards the Ports fans. He ran the rest of the half pitch, which he shot the ball from, which, like I said, was a long way away from the goal. He slid in his knees. Portadown celebrate like they've won the Irish Cup. And that was only the second goal that they had scored that afternoon. 3-1 probably doesn't show how battling that game was. It was even for long stretches. Portadown really took their chances, and it was such an unpredictable game, not due to wind, not due to anything else that was going on above pitch level. It was pitch level at pitch at Newry at the showgrounds. People have talked about it being heavy, but it was really, really cut up. You could see as the game goes along that on the TV that it was really mucky there in person. There was real sludgy elements to it. And you know what? I felt this was a massive negative for Newry. That's a team who gets the ball down, likes to pass and move, and Portadown, who were just trying to fight for any type of scraps. That made it like a cup game almost, and they were up for it, and they were more scrappy, and in many ways, the bounce of the ball just fell their way.
Yes. No, certainly a fantastic. I mean, just sometimes, Peter, it takes that one result, doesn't it? Just maybe to kickstart a team's season. And I was really, really pleased for Niall when I heard that result, and I just hope you touched upon it there at the top of the show. Let's just hope they do get to celebrate it in the end.
Well, indeed, it feels like this is the start of those big triumphant movies. In comes the maverick coach trying to fit together all these forgotten toys. How can he put this misfit team together? And they first get their big win, but oh no, could it all be pegged back? The elation of the Portadown fans with their first win of the season, their first win in months. And then the story comes out via the pen of Keith Bailey in the Belfast Telegraph. There is questions over, well, the team sheet, really. I've been reading this over and over again, and I'm struggling to really put this in a concise sentence. You just have to go through the technicality of it all. Essentially, Portadown put their team in through this Comet system. It popped up on my Football NI app. I was able to see, oh, there's a Newry team, there's the Portadown team, happy days. I arrive at the ground, and then I see on the pitch, oh, there seems to be a change in the Portadown team, and it was Leo Donnellan in for Alberto Balde. But Alberto Balde was on the Comet system, which is the most important bit of this all, and he, originally at least, and he was also on the Portadown graphic. And then it seemed to be the case, the story was that it was one of those, oh, well, it must be those like pre-game changes. Was there an injury? I wasn't really aware. I was just watching the game. And then Leo Donnellan goes down with an injury about 30 minutes in. And then on comes Alberto Balde. That's a bit odd. That's a bit strange. I thought he may have been injured. I had seen no reports of why he was in the team sheet. Maybe it was some sort of admin or clerical error, and it seems to be that is where the whole crux of this story is, as Niffle is set to open an investigation. A statement from Niffle says that they have been made aware of queries raised from two games, because there was a whole little drama about maybe Larne and Glenavon this weekend, and we'll begin an investigation on those matters on Monday. So the drama here is, was Alberto Balde a eligible player to be subbed on? There is people saying one side that he is, others are saying that because he was on the team sheet an hour before the game and then was removed at some point, although I will clarify, it seems to have been at the agreement of the teams and the referees. I can't confirm that, but that's what's being talked about within local media. It's a very confusing one. We've had numerous registration dramas in this league. This one is a head scratcher.
Very much so. Unfortunately, it seems that we just can't have a season pass without one or more of these issues cropping up. I think sort of my understanding, Peter, is that the teams have to submit the team sheet via the Comet system 75 minutes before kickoff, and then if there are any changes to that, and we know that it can happen, a player can be injured in the warm up, or he could maybe take ill or something like that. I think then they have to then notify the referee and the opposing team. I think the interesting thing, Peter, is in the wording in the NIFL rule where it talks about if a player is injured or incapacitated, which is suitably
Incapacitated.
ambiguous, isn't it? I mean,
That's the word of the week. I hear it is.
for instance, like, could a club argue that a player has become incapacitated by being, for example, stuck in traffic on his way to the ground? Or another example is, I mean, you could name a player in the original team and he's maybe not feeling particularly well at that stage. He maybe takes a couple of tablets with a view to hopefully feeling well enough in an hour's time to possibly play some part in the game, even as a substitute. I mean, it's not uncommon really for team sheets to be sort of hastily redrafted when a player gets injured or takes ill. And normally, in that case, they just disappear out of the match day squad entirely. They're either replaced by another sub on the bench, or else the team just goes maybe with 6 subs out of the 7 on the bench. But it's certainly less common to see a player who was in the original starting 11 suddenly demoted to the bench, and then, as you say, come on after half an hour. Definitely a bit of a head scratcher.
So why might this be seen as some sort of competitive issue, I hear you say, because ultimately he didn't start the game, so what does it really matter? Well, some people would say that when you submit the team to the referee, to the system, the opposition are then able to look at that team and they're able to adjust their game plan accordingly. Okay, based on this team, you can see Portadown are playing perhaps X amount of defenders, X amount of strikers. You, player X, I want you on player Y. We need to play this deep, we need to play that man forward. Make sure, because this guy's playing, you need to push him this way, and because that player's not playing, you don't have to worry about filling the space. So the question is, when you make that change, whatever reason it is, some are questioning, is that really competitively fair? I'm not here to make that decision. That is going to be for the powers at be. Why might this then be considered some sort of issue in regards to the win that Portadown registered? Some would argue that this is akin to a registration issue, which Newry know very well due to their drama with Glentoran in the Irish Cup last season. Could it be argued that Alberto Balde, because he was incapacitated, is what's being suggested he was, would that then take him out of the game? Would that mean that they're akin to an unregistered player? I could not tell you one way or the other, and that's why I have no idea what's going to mean.
I've heard that sort of parallel drawn, Peter, there with the Joe Crew issue with Glentoran last season. But in my opinion, it's not an issue over the player's eligibility to play in a league match. I mean, he's been playing league matches week in, week out. To me, it's not like playing a suspended player or a player who's not registered for that competition. So it will be interesting to see what way NIFL rules on this one. I mean, the one thing about it, Peter, if it goes against Portadown and if by any chance they end up losing the points for that win, I mean, that would be a terrible, terrible blow for Portadown. I mean, psychologically, that might be a tougher one for them to take than any of the defeats they've actually suffered on the pitch this season.
It would feel, if you were a Portadown fan, like there's been so many things go wrong due to recruitment, not bringing in the right players. I've heard a lot of Portadown fans say that's where their frustration is. So for there to be some sort of issue relating to off the pitch administration. Look, I don't think Portadown are over the fact that they were not able to join the league in 2008, 2009 due to being late with some sort of administration form. They have form, as they say, and we will just have to wait for what this investigation plays out. Portadown says that they're not making any statement at this time. However, Niall Currie has said on Twitter, few guys must be struggling for stories these days. Sad. Niall, I'm just reporting what the other people are saying. So what this could mean, I don't know. I have definitely heard from some people suggesting that this case is cut and dry. It's black and white. And I have heard from some people who think that this is likely to be the Portadown get the points taken off them. Again, from my assessment, I have absolutely no idea. This feels so different to any other cases. Even if Portadown were to lose the points based on the situation, would it automatically mean Newry get the points? No, it doesn't say that instantly. Like, if you can get deducted points for fielding an eligible player, doesn't mean the other team automatically get the
Yep,
points.
that's true. That's true. I don't think either, Peter. I don't think Newry will be sort of pushing this whole issue particularly strongly. It's one of these unfortunate things, but I can't see Newry really sort of trying to push for something to happen to Portadown. I think it really the issue now will be between Portadown and Niffle really to see how this one pans out.
Just when you think you've heard it all, something like this crops up. So we'll see how they go. Portadown are off and running. Take that, Airbus UK, I hear them say. Portadown are no longer joint worst record for top teams in Europe. And as they move forward, what could it mean? They're looking ahead to January. They wish January could come as soon as possible. I see Robbie Garrett as a free agent. Could he be a player that could fit into that team? We'll just have to see. We'll talk about transfers later on. For Newry, I'm sure they will be disappointed seeing that it's their own home patch. Nobody wanted to lose to this Portadown team. Nobody wants to lose against the bottom team in the league, the team who were having an historically bad season. But on the day, Portadown propped up. And as well as that, Newry had a lot of players missing. Suspensions all over the place. And you add to that now Ryan McGivern for taking down Jordan Jenkins for a one-on-one last man tackle. It's not getting any easier. It's been a tough few weeks for Newry, really, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean that was a disappointing result for Newry, no matter what way anybody tries to dress it up. I mean, everyone knows how brilliant the job Darren Mullen has done, and basically rebuilding the club virtually from scratch. Terrific to see them back in the top flight, but I think they will admit themselves they're better than what yesterday's result and yesterday's performance would suggest.
And one thing you'd say there is that if they had won the game, they're on 15 points right now. A win, and some would argue for all intents and purposes they are safe of 12th already. But if they were to win that game and they were to put 17 points between them and Portadown, that would feel completely unassailable, even in the wildest of dreams. But alas, their chance were missed. What will happen with that Showgrounds pitch? Keep your eye on that. We've seen a few tough pitches, and we'll talk about a few tough pitches later on in the podcast. But we go to what I see as the standout result of the weekend. Were they powered on by the bounce of that David Jeffrey meme returning of him in the ski suit? Div McDaid has arrived. He's scoring plenty of goals, and I just thought Cliftonville had this spirit, had this flow to them right now where they were going to go on a massive run. I did not see this result. Ballymena run out 4-1 winners at home. If you're a Ballymena fan, you think the season starts right now.
Yeah, I mean, like yourself, Peter, I don't think too many people really saw that result coming. I think if everybody's being honest, there have been plenty of occasions. If you'd invited me on the podcast any other week this year, I would have been having to sort of sift through the wreckage of some particularly uninspiring results and uninspiring performances. But I have to say, on Saturday, Ballymena's performance was sensational. I mean, I think anyone who knows me will know I'm not prone to getting overly excited, certainly not where Ballymena are concerned, because I've had too many years of disappointment to get carried away. But Saturday was top notch. On another day, I think probably any Ballymena player could have laid claim to the Man of the Match award. Like, there were no passengers whatsoever on Saturday. Every player contributed. Unfortunately for the rest of the players, David McDaid was just on a different level entirely. He was fantastic. His first goal, I actually don't think the BBC camera angle on the far side of the ground really does justice to how good a goal it was and how quick his footwork was, because
I agree.
He collects the ball with his back to goal, spins past Johnny Addis, and as the goalkeeper, as Nathan Gartside, comes out to meet him. If you can imagine McDaid, it kind of drags the ball past the goalkeeper with the studs of his right foot and then slips it into the net with his left foot. And it was almost all in one fluid movement. It was amazing to watch. Tremendous goal, really was. He was also involved in McDaid in the second. He's tussling on the right-hand side of the pitch with Luke Turner, and then the defender unfortunately lost his footing, and that let McDaid burst away and square it for Kim Nelson to slide home. It's actually very pleasing for Kim Nelson because, I mean, he joined Ballymena in January last year. He's had to sort of fill in several times in in a defensive position, almost sort of as a stand-in, a sort of a makeshift central defender. But since he's been moved back into midfield, he's actually the player who's breaking from midfield to try and support the front players, and he's come up with a couple of goals, including a very good one at Crusaders a couple of weeks ago. There's a peculiar thing about Saturday's match, Peter, in that, I mean, people will look at the result and say, oh, Ballymena have hammered Cliftonville. Cliftonville were very much in the game at times, and Ballymena were indebted to a couple of really good saves from Sean O'Neill. One of them actually just in the time between Nelson scoring the second goal and Josh Kelly scoring the third goal, which was only about 2 minutes later, in between times, Cliftonville had gone straight up the pitch and Sean O'Neill had made a very good save from Joe Gormley. And I mean, had that gone in 2-1, completely different game. So it was nice to see actually David Jeffrey in his post-match interview. Everybody was talking about McDaid, but David always points out like important moments in games like a save or a tackle or something like that there, and then it's nice to see those players getting the recognition they deserve as well.
You have to go with McDaid first. He was a part of every single goal. You're absolutely right about the first one. Go check out the Ballymena feed. It gives you the other angle of it. And just the speed and the thought to ping that between his feet and take it round the keeper to a certain extent was fantastic. He bullies Turner, pushes him off the ball. Reminds me of that goal in a way that we saw with Ballymena when they beat Carrick. It was all that endeavour, right. All that push from McDaid. He's got the bit between his teeth at the minute. He was the one that scored. Beautiful ball. Forget about that as well. That was a really great ball across the box to get the goal there. And he was a part of all four. He scores the fourth one. And I thought at the start of the season that Ballymena potentially had all this attacking talent. And particularly the first 10 games, I think you would look at it and go, that's the one part of the team that really isn't clicking. And right now, it's being spearheaded, it's being dragged by the neck by McDaid. He's showing his quality and he's showing a drive that I haven't seen from him in a while. So far this season, what do you think? Because it's 3 wins out of 4 now. What do you think it is? Do you think it's a tiny little adjustment to the way the team plays? It's players finding their rhythm in this team, particularly when DJ was offering up his resignation a few weeks ago. What is he getting right now?
I think, Peter, there have been a couple of subtle changes, I think, which have coincided with the improvement. First of all, I think David has managed, he's got a couple of players back available to him again, and that has enabled him to play a 3-5-2 or a 5-3-2, whatever way you want to look at it. Personally, I think it's a much better system for the players that Ballymena have. For a few weeks earlier on in the season there, injuries and unavailability of players meant Ballymena were playing a 4-4-2, and there are no real sort of natural wingers within the squad. It was 2 centre forwards who were kind of playing as makeshift wingers in the wide areas. It was Kenny Keane on the left and Ryan Wade and Paul McElroy were on the right. It was, I think, sort of maybe a lot of fans looked at it as trying to put square pegs in round holes to an extent. But since Dougie Wilson's come back in, he'd been out with a long-term injury. He's been able to fit in as a third central defender alongside Connor Keelan and Scott Whiteside, able to push an extra man into midfield where Ballymena were probably getting overrun, because as you see it, Peter, on a weekly basis there, quite a lot of teams play that extra man in midfield. Quite a lot of teams play with wing backs. But the key to that system is to have 2 good wing backs. Ballymena are very fortunate that Mikey Place is very, very good at getting up and down the right-hand side. On the left, David has a few options. Ross Redmond's there at present, but we've also seen Stephen McCulloch in there, and Sean Graham can also do a job in there as well. The other change, really, maybe a lot of people wouldn't be aware of outside of Ballymena. There's been a few changes off the field at Ballymena. For a club like Ballymena, sort of prides itself on continuity and stability. It's actually been quite an uncertain time over the last few months. You'll be aware that the club lost its much loved vice chairman, Don Sterling, who sadly passed away earlier in the season, and that had a bit of an unstabilising effect as well. I think Don would have worked very closely with John Taggart, who was the chairman, and John, I know, had said he had intended to step down at the end of this season. He had done a brilliant job over 9 years in charge. He actually brought that decision forward and stepped down a few weeks ago. Matthew Armstrong has stepped in, and Matthew must be one of the youngest chairmen in the country. Very much a dyed-in-the-wool Ballymena fan. I suppose, Peter, there's a sort of parallel with when a team changes its manager and just there's a fresh voice in the changing room. Perhaps now these one or two wee changes off the field maybe have helped the club even recalibrate to an extent, and certainly the early signs of this new era have been pretty encouraging.
For sure, you're absolutely right about that shape. A few times I saw Ballymena before that Carrick game, that 4-4-2, it was way too static. The players out wide were only ever maybe 5-10 meters in front of their wing backs, and you got the ball and it was just lumping it up to the strikers, and there was no one there to pick it up. Right now, you've got plenty of men forward, and you have those deep wing backs, mainly Ross Redmond, who is just brilliant at firing those deep balls from wide, and you're getting a lot of success right now. And clearly McDaid is absolutely on fire. A word for Cliftonville, clearly not the result they'll want. Somewhat the other results in the league is keep them in there and in about, but potentially this is just the way their firebrand style of football is going to be. When they push forward, they're going to get caught out the odd time, and are results like this are going to happen, really.
Yeah, I mean, when I spoke to Paddy after the game, Paddy McLaughlin, Paddy described it as a bump in the road. I don't think it's any more than that, to be honest, Peter, because Cliftonville are a very, very good side. I mean, Paddy was fulsome in his praise for Ballymena. I mean, it's easy sometimes for a manager to look at a defeat and say, we didn't do this, we didn't do that. Sometimes I think maybe you just have to admit you were second best in the day, and that was certainly the case on Saturday. I think they were probably caught a wee bit unawares just by the intensity of Ballymena's performance. I mean, it's not often you'll see a game where Ryan Curran and Joe Gormley and Rory Hale were as subdued as they were. I mean, I think Cliftonville's best attacking threat came from Roland Hale, who scored a very good goal. I think Cliftonville deserve more respect for what they've done over the past few seasons. There's been a lot of noise made this season about the likes of Larne and Glentoran, but I mean, Cliftonville ran Linfield close last year in the title race, and they're right up there again this year. So I don't think there'll be anybody at Solitude will be pushing the panic button just on the back of one bad result.
They were just so close. We go to two of their biggest rivals in that scrum at the top of the table. We go to Seaview. We go to the Injury Bowl, as some describe it as. Crusaders against Glentoran. Glentoran go into Seaview with the recent bragging rights there, but that is a place over the past 10 years Glentoran rarely go to and get a result, and they didn't get it this time. This was a game that started at a frenetic pace. There was goals from both sides. It was a battle, but Crusaders run out 3-2 winners. They have been the team who have been up and down in patches, but have really been plowing through towards the top of the table thanks to their home form. They're second now. They're in 36 points. They're 5 points behind leaders Larne. And watching this back, this just looked like such a classic Crusaders performance and win. Heatley doing bits on the side. Big man up top, fighting for balls. Defenders getting their work done from set pieces. When Stephen Baxter plans out the best win, like his favourite win possible, he would take a win like this every single week. He must have loved that.
Just even when you look at the pictures from that game and you've got like a packed Seaview, I love seeing packed Irish League, especially somewhere like Seaview where the fans are basically breathing down the necks of the players. You know, you're right up close to the action there. So it's fantastic to see that. You talked there about Glentoran maybe struggling to get a result at Seaview. They're not alone in that there because Crusaders have the best home record in the division this season. After that win on Saturday, they've picked up 25 points out of a possible 30. The only team actually to win at Seaview in the league this season was with Ballymena in that match, which I touched upon earlier, the one where Kim Nelson scored the winner. So really that home form is what has driven Crusaders up the table. And again, Peter, they were a team, when people were talking at the start of the season, who's going to win the league, and you were hearing the usual things, Linfield, Glentoran will be strong. I think Larne will do better this year. I don't think I heard Crusaders mentioned once from anybody that I had spoken to, and that's why it's really such a good achievement, particularly as you say, given the injuries that they've had and the key players that are missing. Paul Heatley's just back from a lengthy suspension, so any team would miss a player of that quality as well. Really, for them to have done as well as they have, especially after losing someone like Ben Kennedy early on in the season. I don't know how far down the road of recovery he is or the extent of his injury. If they could get him back at some point in the second part of the season, that would be the equivalent to signing a new player, wouldn't it? A player of that quality.
I know they have one of the players of the season, Philip Lowry, and we all know the goals he's been getting. He's currently top goal scorer in the league. For some reason, I would have not clocked Crusaders as the top goal scorers in the league, full stop. They've got 38 goals. They've only conceded the 22. So week by week, they're winning. They have that 11, and oftentimes in this league, it can just be those key players. 1 to 11 is important, but you need those players who can make a difference. And you look at the Glentoran side, and I know they're missing McCartan, and I know they're missing McMenamin, and I know we're missing Roy Donnelly. Lots of people they were missing. But they just didn't have the type of player who was going to do what the likes of Heatley was going to do. They didn't have someone who was going to push on up top and make a difference. This team has brilliant defensive stability. You've seen that with the run where they didn't concede forever, and they're now trying to fit in all these great defensive players. They even had 3 at the back. Will that be the future of that team? We'll just have to see. It wasn't the shape of the team really when they were going on this great run, and they're not going to be able to get a like-for-like replacement all over the time, but I saw this team be quite deep at times. You look at the players that they have on the pitch. They have McCullough, McLean, Wilson, all defenders. Bobby Burns would be a defensive player. Singleton's a wing-back defensive player. Reece Campbell spent a lot of time as a wide defender, and you fit them all in, and they're great footballers, but I think they did get 2 goals, one from a set piece, one from a really fantastic run by Danny Perkis breaking away from the defender. They had a really great thing going, and it's not all over yet, but they had a really great thing going with the wide men and McCartan pinging things in the middle. But you take that out of the team, and it may be a really difficult few weeks now as we go into Boxing Day and other big games. Like the reverse version of what Portadown are looking at for Glentoran, I think it's about just trying to stay in there because they are not at their best right now, and it's with such a big squad, it's kind of a personnel thing in my mind.
Yeah, I think you're right, Peter, with that. I mean, any club would struggle without the services of a player like Conor McMenamin, who for me is the best player in the league. I know there was a lot said about the extent of the injury that he had picked up that night at Coleraine, and there was a lot of talk about the tackle and whatnot. And thankfully he was able to recover and play in the next game. And then sort of lo and behold, he picked up a different injury, which now genuinely will keep him out for several weeks. And it's unfortunate as well, Peter, because not only for Glentoran, but I mean for the Irish League as a whole, as a product. You want the best players to be available. I think Glentoran without Conor McMenamin, it weakens Glentoran and it weakens the league to an extent as well. Again, Shea McCartan now has picked up a sort of a lengthy suspension following his red card against Cliftonville. Shea maybe hasn't reached the same sort of levels that he did when he was at Ballymena. Obviously, I saw him quite a lot at Ballymena, and he is a fabulous, fabulous footballer. I still do think that sort of once Glentoran perhaps maybe find the role that suits McCartan best, he will become a really, really big player for them.
We will go to Colerane's game. I was up at the showgrounds for this. Coleraine run out, 2-0 winners, jump out fast, get 2 goals within the first 10 minutes. They could have scored so many. They peppered that Dungannon goal with so many chances. Go check out both these goals. I know the first one isn't exactly like a big thumper from out wide, but 3 minutes in, pretty much the first attack for Coleraine, it comes out of the box, and Dean Jarvis, what a foot he had, put his laces through it. That would have been a brilliant goal, but Declan Dunn's only able to parry it away to the side. Shevin, he's right there. fires it back in. But the McDermott goal, that is well, I was going to say it's the goal of the month debate, but we've just seen Moorhouse score that crazy one. But from a technical point of view, if you don't love big thumpers from out wide, big rockets from far away, this one from McDermott, what a way to score your first goal for Coleraine. I think he's on the side of the pitch. He's pretty much just stopping the ball from going out for a throw-in. And he weaves his way through that Dungannon defence, gets himself into the box. And when you get in that position in the box, there's only one thing you can do when you're free of a man at your tail. You just whack it and see what happens. And I went straight into the top corner, and he ran towards the home stand with this disbelief in his eyes. Like, he's just like, oh my goodness, did I just score? Did that actually just happen? It was brilliant. And I thought Crusaders could have pushed on and got more, and they didn't, just by maybe sitting back a wee bit too much. Dungannon getting a few lucky last-ditch tackles, getting in the way. There were so many offsides. I talked about that. There were just so many of them. And I think that's because Matthew Shevlin, he is this very unique striker in the league where you wouldn't place him as a target man, but he really plays on that final line of the defender, and that's probably why he's getting a lot of offsides, because he's just right on the line every time. But Coleraine created a lot of chances out wide, and then we're firing the ball in. And you thought every single time Shevlin could just pull this out of the air and thump it in, or he could beat the man and get a header. And he just has so many skills. I was in awe of how brilliant he was. But I also thought McHenry was fantastic. Lee Lynch, it was like both those players had this real free rein to move about the box and go out wide, come in the middle. I talked to a few Coleraine fans, and they were like, oh, we got away with that. And in some aspects they did, because Dungannon had the odd chance, but didn't have anybody up top that could really punish the home side. I don't think Coleraine fans know what a technically brilliant team they have. Jarvis is a really underrated player in that midfield. The passing, the movement, the fire to push up and make those runs. I really enjoyed watching everything Coleraine did on Saturday.
Coleraine are a very good side, Peter. I mean, you mentioned Conor McDermott there. Conor McDermott's been a very, very astute signing from Warren Kearney. Defensively, very solid, which is what you're looking for in the first instance. But I mean, we've seen him a few times this season bombing up and down that right flank. As you say, if he can add goals like the sort of goal that he scored, if he can add that to his list of talents, then he's quite a player. You're absolutely right. They've got some tremendous ball players. Coleraine, McHenry, Jamie Glacken's another very, very gifted player. I actually thought as well, whenever Coleraine installed the artificial pitch in the summer, I thought that would be a big plus for those type of players, because the pitch at Coleraine Showgrounds over the years, the grass pitch maybe wouldn't have been conducive to playing that sort of football. But I think that has really helped them as well. And certainly outside of the full-time clubs, I think, Coleraine and Cliftonville are certainly the best equipped of the remaining part-time clubs to try and break that stranglehold that the full-time clubs have.
So impressive, and actually very, very fit. The players just kept on going and going and going. And for Dungannon, I have to paint the picture that I saw the odd time. There was a lot of very good technical players as well for Dungannon. We all know Rhys Campbell, but I thought it was a great game actually for Connor, coming from deep, coming from midfield. I also thought Mark Walsh looked great when he was on the ball. They just really couldn't find anybody to link up with. And that's with McCready, who I thought really is quite serviceable. He's up there, very rangy, trying to pick the ball out, build up plays as this front man, but it just wasn't going for them. People keep saying there is a run in Dungannon. There absolutely is. They are trying to build up from the back, but I think teams know this. Like, there was a time where Coleraine were 2-0 up, and Dunn is about to do the goal kick, and there is a defender to his right at the edge of the box, and his defender is left at the edge of the box, and then his wing backs were only maybe a few yards higher up in the pitch, and it looked like a five-a-side game, because Coleraine had about 5 players up top ready to go, and you could see Dunn kind of look back and forward being like, if I pass it to you, we're just playing five-a-side in this area of the pitch. And they did lose the ball a lot halfway through their own half. I don't know if this is ever going to come together, if it's all going to click in together from the playing at the deck, playing from deep sticks, but they're skilled players in this Dungannon team. Do not forget that. And we'll go through the other games. Linfield take care of business. They get revenge against Carrick at home. We talked about a tough-looking pitch at Newry. This Windsor pitch, that's not looking great right now, but they're able to dig in, get a win against Carrick. Even if they pull the goal back to make it 2-1 late in that second half, they win out 3-1 winners. It's a good run of fixtures for Linfield at the minute, but they're not slipping on any of these banana peels. They're getting it done, even if it's not the most flashiest wins in the world.
Yeah, I mean, that's 10 games unbeaten now in all competitions. I mean, I interviewed David Healy after that Linfield beat Larne recently, and David was still insisting that they were miles behind in the title race. But I mean, you just know, Peter, at some stage of the season, Linfield are going to stitch together the sort of run that they're on at the minute. Don't think you can underestimate just how big a hangover there was, how big a disappointment from the nature of Linfield's European exit, and I think maybe that spilled into their early season domestic form as well. But I mean, they've been over this marathon course so many times with great success. I mean, I don't think David Healy will be one bit disappointed with the position that they find themselves at present.
They had 80 for Tannen scoring 2 goals. I genuinely have been very impressed by how much McDaid has this fight. He's doing a lot of the running. He's almost mirroring what his namesake of Ballymena are doing. They are running the channels, fighting for every ball, trying to be running on the last defender. And right now they're going to have a couple of big tests moving forward. And I don't think Carrick really had many people backing them for a win. They got 2 wins against Portadown back-to-back almost in the league. They've come up against some tough opposition. That's another loss for them. They're looking quite sweet right now in the league, but I'm sure they're sitting there thinking, we don't want to get found out. We don't want to fall too far in the table. They want to still play in the sandpit with the likes of Ballymena, the likes of Glenavon, who themselves fell to a top team. You know, we always talk about how champions always win when they're not playing well. Well, that was exactly what Friday night was at Glenavon. Larne sneaked the win. It's not like Glenavon were all over them, but that game just had scruffy draw written all over it, and they get their goal from a set piece. It's an OG for Glenavon. Larne will take it and run.
The first thing I thought about Larne's win at Glenavon on Friday night was, I just thought that's exactly how a title-winning Linfield team would have ground out a 1-0 win away from home in a difficult match. Larne will take a lot of positives from that, because obviously earlier in the season, Larne have been steamrolling teams 4 and 5. It's sometimes that's just not going to happen every week. At some point, you're just going to have to roll the sleeves up and battle out a stubborn 1-0 away from home, as you say, settled by a scrappy own goal. But they all count, don't they? And again, like Glentoran, Larne had a couple of setbacks recently there, and it's, it really, that was a big match to see how they responded to that there, and they've come away with the points, and that obviously keeps them sitting pretty at the top of the table.
The question I've been asking is, does anybody want to win this league? Every team's having their moment in the sun and then they're fading away. Some people think that some of these teams think beating Linfield equals winning the Gibson Cup outright. They've got plenty more games to go. Perhaps now this is Linfield's chance to get everybody predicting them, and hopefully from their point of view, they'll not want to go on their own run. They're just taking it bit by bit, and they're getting their players back. They're getting Shields back there. They want to get Kirk Miller firing again. But for Glenavon, they'll be disappointed from that game. They would hope to have sneaked something from it. There was only a few chances from out wide. There was long hits from Campbell in the first half, Isaac Bird in the second. But if Larne didn't win that game, they would have felt massively disappointed, because there was a chance on a plate for Miller running through, Leroy Miller, and it was squared to him by Paul O'Neill. and he just ballooned it over the bar. He'll be very thankful that they were able to get out of there with all 3 points. A sitter that was.
Very un-Leroy Miller, like a player who has absolutely flourished at Larne this season. I mean, if I think back to whenever Leroy first came on the scene in the Irish League at Ballymena, he'd come through the youth academy there. Obviously, Ballymena supporters were willing him to do well. Whenever he first came into the team, it was towards the end of Glenn Ferguson's time in charge. Leroy initially came into the team being predominantly left-footed. He started off, he was playing on the left wing. After the change of manager, whenever David took over, actually, I can remember Leroy playing a few games at left back as well. It's the sort of thing, Peter, where Leroy maybe would have had 30, 40 senior appearances under his belt, and probably even at that stage, the jury might still have been out on him. You know, people would be thinking, you know, is this guy gonna make it at this level? And then David put him into centre of midfield, and all of a sudden, boom, off he went. It's just, you know, that was an absolute natural choice for a player like Leroy, a box-to-box midfielder. He's a supreme athlete, a consummate professional. He's really dedicated. You know, he's always working on his game, always working on his fitness. You never read about any dramas from Leroy Miller off the pitch as well. He would be a manager's dream, I would say. Anybody who has managed him would say that. And he has really. I was really interested to see how the move to full-time football would drive on his development, and he has really sort of taken his game to a new level with Larne this season. I think probably if there was maybe one tiny criticism of him before, I would have said possibly maybe he didn't score enough goals for the positions that he got himself into. He's added that to his game this season, and he has really been pivotal in what Larne have done so far.
You're absolutely right there. He has all the physical tools. You can see that. And this season, he's really shown off that drive to push forward, that energy that he has. And I think his tools, his abilities makes this Larne team tick. You see all the headline grabbing goals from O'Neill and Bonus, but some of the somewhat, and I know they get their plaudits, but the somewhat unforgotten heroes are Miller with his running, his passing. Actually, Ben Doherty is a very dynamic player. He's played deepish, but he wouldn't have the build of a regular winger. He's just that strange wide to centre runner. When you see him with the ball, it feels like he's beating his man and he's just progressing into that box. And of course, Cosgrove's firing the balls in. He's such a key cog. If they were to lose Miller, I don't think they have any other player that can fill that centerpiece, that kingmaker role that they have. And a very exciting season for him. And Larne get the win. They stay top of the league. And will they push on? We will have to see. All these big teams clearly looking ahead to January. Who could be available? We'll just have to see. But there's already paper talk and an old familiar name, a sterling quality player. Will he have all the fight, the drive? Will he have all those skills that he showed off when he was previously in the league, as reported by Stephen Beacom in the Sunday Life? Linfield, Lard and Coleraine are all having a little mosey at one Brad Lyons. He's playing for Kilmarnock at the minute. He was an amazing player for Coleraine, helped them win the 2018 Irish Cup. Has some of the traits, actually, of a Leroy Miller, I would say. He's strong, he's big, he's a forceful runner, great passer, huge amount of drive. Any of those teams would absolutely love him. His time in England and in Scotland, he originally moved to Blackburn. He's been with a few other teams within the lower end of the English League. Morecambe, he's been with St Mirren. He's at Kilmarnock right now. Could he return to the Irish League? We'll just have to see. Obviously, Beacom suggesting that teams are looking at him. If you're any team and you have the money, you would love to have Brad Lyons, wouldn't you?
Brad Lyons, Peter, was a tremendous player whenever he was in his first spell in the Irish League as an up-and-coming youngster at Coleraine. I mean, a player who fully deserved the opportunity to make a cross-channel transfer. Thought he was a fabulous prospect. I was really interested to see. I really thought his career would kick on across the water. Maybe hasn't to the extent where maybe a lot of people would have expected it to. But my goodness, any club who is able to an Irish League club, if they're able to bring Brad Lyons back into this league, what an asset that would be to any of the full time, any of the title chasing clubs. And again, as I said earlier with Conor McMenamin, a player of that sort of ability adds to the league as a whole. And it would be fantastic to see a player of Brad Lyon's quality back in the Irish League.
It's clearly what this new league, this push towards full-time football, these are the type of opportunities they're pushing for. You have got McCullough at Glentoran. That seemed like a real marquee signing, bringing him in. You had that big signing I felt with Lavery going to Linfield. Any of the teams suggested would love to have him there, would be a real key part of that team if he was able to stay fit. That's the one question. Is he going to have to get fit? Will he be able to find his rhythm in this league very quickly? Coleraine clearly probably seems like the three out of the three, only because they're not full time, but maybe the draw to a manager that knows him, to a club that he's been at, could be a place where he wants to kick on and get his career back on track. But Linfield or Larne, he fits right into those teams, particularly Linfield. The way they've been playing, they have some youth in that midfield. They have obviously the likes of Kirk Miller and Fallon, but the dynamism that Lions showed previously, I think it could be a real swing of the pendulum towards Linfield. It just solidifies that midfield of Linfield if it was to come off. And you probably look at Linfield and go, where have been, I know I mentioned Lavery, but where have been these big marquee, we're here to win the league signings? I think Linfield fans would be shouting from the rooftops in joy if they were to get a player like Brad Lyons. It's already getting me excited for January. I know Curry's going to mix up the pot. What could all these other teams do? Because there's so many poised, ready to go to try and fight for this league. And there's that little battle in your head if you're a chairman thinking, ooh, am I just one or two players away? And there's also a lot of players across the league who haven't been getting a lot of game time. Could we see some players on Colerane's bench go elsewhere? Maybe some people who aren't getting on for Crusaders, could they find their way at a Glenavon or somewhere else? Really exciting transfer window ahead, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you know how difficult it is as well. Just the clubs battling for the title, they'll be looking for just that one or two players that could possibly give them the edge over their rivals. The teams in mid-table will be just trying to make that push into the top six, try and break that stranglehold. And of course, the clubs down at the bottom who are battling for survival. I mean, I have this vision of Niall Currie at Portadown sitting in his office there, ticking the days off on a calendar until it gets to January, because if there's anybody who's capable of rounding up a few players in the January transfer window, it's Niall. It will be really interesting to see what he does there. I mean, it's just, you probably noticed it sort of quietly there. One or two of the players who were brought in that sort of summer recruitment splurge have slowly and quietly have left the club. I think probably what that showed at that stage, just you probably cannot expect to bring in a virtual full team of players who are strangers to the Irish League and expect them to gel. I mean, over many years of having interviewed players who have from England or Scotland or down south or wherever, the first thing that they always say, oh, blimey, it's physical, isn't it? It's much more physical than I expected. I think, Niall will be looking for a few players who've been round the block a bit in the Irish League there. But again, everybody's looking for players who can make a difference. I think the one difference now, it always used to be said, fans of clubs like maybe Ballymena and Glenavon and whatnot, it was always be well, oh, hold on, we're competing with the big clubs for the same players. That's no longer the case now. The full time teams are dipping into a completely different pool of players than the part time teams. Just that they have the wherewithal to do that now. I think really for the part time clubs, their recruitment has to be on point now, and I think there still are those wee gems to be found if you know where to look. Even down in the Championship, there'll probably be Premiership clubs will be looking at some of the clubs up around the top end of the Championship and players. Obviously, Loughgall are having a very good season. You look at the likes of Nedis Maculitis, he had a spell at Coleraine before. It maybe just wasn't the right time for him. He's gone down there, scored a lot of goals at Loughgall. You look at players like Eamon Scannell at Ards, who has had plenty of Premiership experience as well. Again, could be ready to make the move back up again. The other intriguing one there is Adam Sally at Ards, obviously on loan from Portadown. That I'm not entirely sure what went on there regarding that move, but again, I don't know whether Portadown can recall him in January, or whether that's a season-long loan. Again, for a club who have, up until the weekend, who have struggled to score goals, a player like Adam Sally could make a difference for them.
The one thing that stands out to me right now is that a lot of times in sports you see leagues become copycat leagues, and because you've seen other teams doing big things at the top of the league when it comes to transfers and it's working out, bonus has worked out now. McCartan's really finding his rhythm with Glentoran, looking like the player that they were paying all that money for. Could that be the thing where clubs go, we need to start spending this money? That's the interesting thing. Or will they try and stick to the guns? So we expect, for January at least, could be a lot of change, but there's still a lot of games to play before we can ring the bell and say the market's open. Games ahead, prepare yourself. If you've not heard Wham or Fairy Tale of New York, guess what? Get to a game early and you can shake your little Christmas tail feather to it, because out go the weird rave tunes that seem to be plaguing these Irish League grounds for the past couple of decades, and in comes the Christmas classics. And the first ground that'll be pumping out the Christmas classics will probably be the Coleraine Showgrounds on Friday night. It's being streamed by the Babe, where Coleraine will play their third game in 7 days against Crusaders. I saw this fixture, not physically, but in my head, a few weeks ago when Crusaders came up on a Friday after their big hard, well, they're somewhat full-time, a big hard working day, went up to Coleraine, and you just think Coleraine should absolutely have the advantage here. But having played one extra game in the League Cup, which of course could go to extra time, penalties, all those things, this is another really interesting looking game. Do you have a feeling one way or the other who's going to come out here? Because Coleraine have the advantage, but Crusaders have that huge lift after the Glentoran win.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a brave person, Peter, at the minute to predict a lot of games in this league. It's toss of a coin stuff in many respects. I always remember when Roy Walker was manager at Ballymena, he had a phrase that he was he used very often. He said, "Every point is a prisoner in this league. Like it has to be captured. Like nobody's going to hand you anything easily in this league." Coleraine Crusaders is a very intriguing looking game. As you say, how big a factor will the League Cup semi-final have in that there? Crusaders will obviously be arriving after their early exit in that competition. They'll be arriving at Coleraine fresher. Coleraine will have played in the semi-final. Could that just tilt that in Crusaders' favour? They're a side in form, but Coleraine are very, very dogged defensively, extremely hard to break down. Oran knows how to get the best out of that panel of players. And again, anybody who wins that match will have to do it the hard way. It certainly won't be an easy one.
I feel like lessons have potentially been learnt at Coleraine. They're looking brilliant at the back right now. They got their 7th clean sheet in 8 games. They're 4th in a row, and they were caught on the hop last time, straight almost from kickoff. Crusaders got that goal. Just check out Coleraine. Perhaps Glacken will be back. We'll have to see, but I think that's going to be a fantastic game on TV. But from what I saw on Saturday, particularly at home, I feel like, and the injuries for Crusaders should not be completely eradicated or discounted. Shevlin potentially's got his eye in for goal again. I think that's potentially maybe a 1-2-1 win for Coleraine. Close, but I think they'll get the win. There is no game for Linfield or Cliftonville after their little antics this week, as Linfield are away playing in the Scottish Challenge Cup. So yeah, whatever, Linfield, we don't care. Go play in your cool Scottish league. We don't care. We've got plenty of games. Doesn't matter. Cliftonville get a wee weekend off. That's good for them. But we've got other teams. We've got 4 more games on Saturday at 3 p.m. And, who needs Cliftonville, Linfield when you've got Dungannon Swifts Carrick? Eh? Am I right? That's going to be fun. There could be goals there. Maybe. And I think there will be. But for who, I don't know. Because as much as Dungannon got that uplifting result against Glenavon, that was a really tough loss to Coleraine. Carrick got a few good wins against Portadown, as I said, but they have been finding it tough recently as well. Will either of them feel good about themselves going into this game? Perhaps not. But at Stangmore Park, Dungannon will feel if they're to push on and get away from Portadown, who are, for now, only 3 points away from them again. You've only got a few little fixtures in the calendar circled thinking good chance for 3. Dungannon will want to come out strong and early and try and get everything they possibly can from this game. Do you think they'll do it?
Absolutely, Peter. That's a big game for both sides for different reasons. Obviously, Dungannon are fighting for their lives. I can't quite put my finger on why it has gone wrong for Dungannon this season. I thought Dungannon had signed reasonably well in the summer. They added a few experienced heads. I actually felt last season it was starting to come round a bit for what Dean Shields was trying to do there. He's a very like his father. He's basically sort of definitely cut from the same cloth as Kenny. They have a very definite way that they want the game to be played. There's a strange paradox I feel that I think if Dean Shields was in charge of a bigger club, I think he would be very, very good. I think the way that he coaches players, I think he would bring the best out of them. The difficulty is at Dungannon, possibly maybe the caliber of player that he has there, is he maybe possibly trying to ask them to play in a way that they're possibly not capable of? It's a difficult one, but he's extremely principled. He'll stick to his guns. He makes no apologies for that. But I mean, Dean has played the game at the highest level, and he knows as well it's a results-driven business. They haven't really been getting the results this season. The victory over Glenavon a couple of weeks ago was a welcome boost to them. But they will be targeting games like this as games where they can pick up points. And again, Carrick have they've made great strides this season under Stuart King, for which Carrick a number of times been very, very impressed with them. They're particularly strong at home. They have a very difficult looking December fixture list. They had Linfield on Saturday, I think, before the turn of the month. They've got Glentoran, and then they have Larne in the East Antrim derby on Boxing Day. So really, looking at the fixtures that they have, this will be one where Carrick will be trying to pinpoint picking up some points there. So that's an intriguing game as well.
I think you've hit the nail on the head with Dean. You're right. I can see what he's trying to do, and perhaps it just isn't coming off. And if other teams with the quality of players, as I saw there on Saturday of Coleraine, perhaps it could all click together. This is a battle of two very tempestuous managers who will rise out of it all. It'll be fiery, no doubt. Carrick will not want to sit back, take this easy. They'll want to get the points to push towards that battle for 7th. It probably says to me this is a score draw. There will be elements to both. They're very different teams in the way they play football, the way they're made up, but I think they'll both get a goal. They'll both find a moment of weakness against each other, but they'll probably all even out to be a draw. The last time these two teams met, it was the falling down moment for the then leaders, and in many ways people saw the champions-elect. But it's not looking exactly the same right now. Glentoran hope that Glenavon start playing the way they've been playing in the past few weeks against Larne and Dungannon. It's at the Oval this time. Could the game against Linfield impact Glentoran? Of course it could. Or do you see another crazy surprise win for Glenavon again, or do you think Glentoran will have the quality to get the result here? Because this feels closer than it should be.
It's the great enigma, Peter, that is Glenavon. Eh? You really don't know what you're going to get. I'm sure Gary must tear his hair out there. They're more than capable of it. Really, is it going to be the Glenavon that are capable of beating Glentoran as they did earlier in the season, or equally so, Glenavon are capable of turning around and getting walloped 5-1 at home by Newry? That's really they, like a lot of teams in the bottom half of the table. They struggle for consistency, and they struggle. It's kind of, it can be stop start. It's a win here followed by a draw, followed by a defeat, and then maybe another draw. The teams in the bottom half of the table, they just struggle to stitch together that sort of sustained run that can propel them up the table. They have the players to be doing better. There's no question about that. Some very good players in that Glenavon side, and Matthew Fitzpatrick. There's a genuine goal threat there, a striker who's capable of scoring goals. A big game for Glentoran, really. They have to try, as you say, it's almost a bit patched up at the minute without McMenamin and without McCartan. There's a big emphasis on players like Jay Donnelly and Danny Purkis there. But again, this could be their opportunity to shine as well. Glentoran really, I think, will have to be trying to target maximum points from this fixture.
That oval was an unhappy hunting ground for significant patches last season, and with Glenavon being there, knowing what Glenavon did to them when they were feeling so good about themselves, getting an early goal will be key, actually, for either side, because you can see Glenavon getting a goal and Glentoran completely panicking and perhaps leaving the back door open for a Fitzpatrick or a Campbell or even an Isaac Bird to power on through while they throw men forward. In turn, if Glentoran get an early goal, they can just choke out the rest of this game. They can rest on their laurels and push Glenavon so that they will in turn catch them out after them ploughing men forward on the counter. Very tasty game. I think Glentoran do get away with a 2-0 win thanks to a late goal to make the points safe, I would say there. Larne go against Newry. Newry are without players due to suspension. Ryan McGivern joins those ranks. Larne, well, clearly at the top of the league at Inver Park. They rarely play on a Saturday. How will they feel? It's a tough one. I think as though perhaps Newry just have been on that poor run. I think it will be 3 losses in a row. This one will be 4 if they don't get a result. You have to favour Larne here, really, don't you?
I think so, Peter. I think Larne will come into this one as very clear favourites. I've watched Larne a few times earlier in the season. They were absolutely battered teams. They were tremendous to watch. They were very easy in the eye. So many good players who are comfortable in the ball. Again, sometimes when you look at that team sheet, when you see a Larne team sheet and you go through it from the starting 11, you're going, that's right up there with anything in this league. That starting 11. I think possibly for me, the issue is when you go down onto the subs bench, and you're looking at that there, and you're thinking, really, if something happens, if it's not going according to plan, and Paul O'Neill and Lee Bonus aren't firing on all cylinders up front, how do you change that? Who do you bring on to change it? They've had a fairly settled side so far this season. I think for me, the question mark with Larne, there's absolutely no question marks over the quality of the players that they have. Do they have the squad maybe to sustain it over the marathon course of a league season? Again, they will certainly start off as big favourites, as you say. Newry a bit out of sorts at the minute. This is maybe the stickiest period they've had since their return to the Premiership. I'm sure they will certainly be wanting to get that Portadown match out of their system there. So could be difficulties just with lack of availability of players due to suspension. But I think if Newry come away from Inver Park with anything added to their points tally at all, I think Darren Mullen will be very happy.
You've got it nailed. A lot of where I saw Newry being dangerous or look more confident on the ball was when they were playing out wide to either Thielen or to McGovern, who got that goal against Portadown. And I look at the Lawrence side of things, and I just think their centre backs, that back 3-5, they're just too wily for that. I think they're going to smother them back there, and I can see them maybe finding it tough to get a goal against Newry, but I think Lauren could run out here fairly easily. Might take maybe 40, 50, 60 minutes, but Lauren are finding it tough, and it's probably just a bad mismatch, not only from a real quality from 1 to 11 point of view, but just from a shape and a makeup of the team. This is strange to say when you look at Lauren being a lot better, but this is Newry's kryptonite. I feel when you see it all pumped up. And we end with your fine fellows feeling great about themselves. 3 out of 4 wins, as I said. You go to Portadown, you have a great record against them, but you did fall to Portadown at Shamrock Park, one of that mini revival from Doolin. You wouldn't want, as much as yes, Portadown got a win, and everyone's going, oh, remember when Portadown win, that was great, let's give them applause. You'll not want to, after getting all these wins against Crusaders and Cliftonville, there must be a part of you that fear, we're not going to go to Portadown and lose, are we?
There would be nothing more stereotypically Ballymena United than to beat Cliftonville and then go to lose to the bottom side Portadown. Again, it's one of those fixtures, Peter. A lot might even boil down to attitude on the day. If you think you're going to go there and just turn up and win, a lot of people have gone into matches with that attitude and have come out with egg on their faces there. I think Portadown, irrespective of what happens with the Baldy situation, I think what happened on the pitch for Portadown at Newry will have given them a great deal of confidence that they now know they can compete at this level. They will be thoroughly looking forward to, with that first win finally under their belt, they'll be looking forward to try and take that on to the next stage and try and get a good result and an impressive performance in front of their own fans at Shamrock Park. So a very, very tricky looking fixture for Ballymena. Confidence is high with Ballymena at the minute. If David McDaid continues in that sort of vein of form that he's in at the minute, that sort of quality might just make the difference. Some people sometimes ask me about who's the best player or who's been my favourite player I've ever seen play for Ballymena, and my answer to that straight away would always be Gary McCutcheon. I think McDaid is probably the closest I've seen to a McCutcheon type of player in terms of his movement, his positional awareness, just his footballing intelligence of what positions to take up and just how he conducts himself and how he goes about it. They're to me they're great similarities between David McDaid and Gary McCutcheon. I was a bit surprised when Ballymena signed McDaid in the summer. I thought probably would have had no shortage of suitors from throughout the league. But certainly he has been a standout player for Ballymena this season, and he just, particularly for teams in the bottom half of the table, a player of that sort of quality can often be the difference in games like this.
I don't think there's a team in the entire league that wouldn't have McDaid as even that Danny Purkis role. I don't think there's any team that wouldn't be happy to have him as a key cog in their team. And he's showing the skill, he's showing the quality. And when you have a player that plays at a top team, I know Lauren went down and came back up again, but when you have a team you have a player who's used to be in this, kind of big dog for one of the big teams, you often see when they drop down, attitude is always going to be the thing that's questioned. Why are they there? They're not fighting up top, or they're going to have the same drive. And clearly, and I've seen it live in person for that Carrick game, you've seen it the past few weeks, he's got it, he's loving it. The man can't dance, but that's okay. He just needs to stick back. Like, they scored 4 goals and not one of the David Jeffrey skiing moves. David Jeffrey says that people called him the Strut, and if David McDaid gets those moves, people will be calling him the Strut. Who starts off the strongest will be key, because they'll set the tone. But wow, Gary McCutcheon, there's a name the streets won't forget. Did he win Ulster Player of the Year for you guys or Crusaders?
I think that's right. Yeah, the other, in what was a fairly mundane, a fairly average Ballymena team, he just absolutely stood out. He was head and shoulders above anything else in that particular team. And again, I mean, that's how his peers viewed him as well at that stage. He was named the top player.
I feel like I would talk about that era, that late 2000s, early 2010s era of Irish League. The way I'm going to talk about it sounds like I'm talking about football being played with a leather ball, but I know there's a few youngsters out there who don't really remember a time before Joe Gormley. But when you talk about Gary McCutcheon, he was a young, fighty Scot. Let's just say he was dogged. That's exactly what he was. We've used that word before, but when people used to play with two strikers, and I know some teams do, retro, but the best way to describe him as when you used to play two strikers, you would have like the big man, small man combination they would talk about. Gary McCutcheon is your prototypical small man. He's running, he's getting the ball, great shot on him. Probably didn't score many headers, but had a great whip from outside the box and played some great football even into his mid-30s. A really great, exciting player in the league. Loved watching Gary McCutcheon. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me, Mr. Alexander. If people like the things you think and the sayings you say, where can they see that in digital form, potentially on a daily basis?
Well, I'm still doing some bits and pieces of work for the BBC with their live text updates on match days, which I thoroughly enjoy. It keeps me very much in the loop in the Irish League, which is a great passion of mine. So that's something that I certainly hope to continue doing.
Oh, what a scribe, getting all the lingo going. I had my 20th reporter gig for radio there on Saturday, and I'm still sitting there trying to think, how am I going to you get this great little piece and fire it out, everybody reads it and goes, oh, that's brilliant. I'm like, how do I describe this one goal for the third different time and somehow make it sound free flowing and exciting? So it was a pleasure to share I feel like we're all hidey-tidy here, but it was a pleasure to share a press box with yourself a few weeks ago. It was fantastic to hear from you, and it has been great, and I look forward to jumping in and seeing more of your work over the next while.
Thank you very much indeed, Peter. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And how can they follow you online?
You can follow me on Twitter at Stephen_B is the handle. You can hopefully catch up with my latest ramblings there.
These colours don't run, sir. Fantastic. Stephen, been an absolute pleasure. Chat to you soon.
Thank you, Peter.
Wrap it up, send it home. Big old podcast this week. Some fun things going on behind the scenes. By the time you're listening to this, Michael O'Neill's probably been confirmed as Northern Ireland manager, so stick around the socials. We may talk about that. It may have to be next week, but we're definitely going to get into all that. I told you it was coming. Totally based on nothing, but I told you all the same. Thank you very much for listening. If you want to check out maybe some behind the scenes, aka just me at games, photographs, I'm sure I put them up on the social media pages for this lovely little podcast. You can do that. Follow me, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all at Kicking Match. You can listen to this podcast hands-free. Well, you can probably do it with headphones, but let's pretend you can do it headphones-free, hands-free, feet-free, Bluetooth-free, let's say. You can listen to this via smart speaker. Just say, play at, we'll say the little name for the smart speaker first, and then go, hey, play Kicking Match, an Irish League podcast. You've heard it all before, you've seen it all again. The one thing you will not see coming is probably the crazy results you see this weekend. Wrap up warm, enjoy yourself. I'll be at a game, hopefully you will too. Till next time, thanks for listening. Cheerio, bon venue, Feliz Navidad for now, and ho ho ho.